Hey guys, it's Bear. This is Life of T-Men. It's Friday, November 6th, and this week's topic is sexuality. The upcoming couple of weeks, we actually are going to discuss the difference between gender and sex and the difference between gender and sexuality, because a lot of times these things can get blurred and confused, especially by people who aren't on the trans spectrum and aren't on the LGBT spectrum. So they do get confused a lot. So we're going to be breaking things down and comparing and contrasting. This week's topic, though, is just straight up sexuality. And it's good that it has its own week because it's such a complicated issue that in doing research for this video, I actually came up with like conflicting answers to the question, what is sexuality? So I think that when most people use the word sexuality, they are really talking about sexual orientation, which is who you are attracted to, and more specifically, who you actually have sexual relations with. Whereas sexuality is your actual capacity for sexual feelings, attractiveness or attraction towards others in general, and like things like sensuality. But like I said, in looking it up, when you look up like the straight up definition of the word sexuality, you come up with also sexual orientation and preference, and you'll also get hits for how sexually active you are or your level of sexual activity. They're not wrong, it's just what it is that it's really hard to label things, and you're talking about a spectrum, and so trying to find where you fit on that spectrum and trying to identify all the different little points that are on a spectrum just gets really complicated. So instead of going through the different types of sexualities and sexual orientations, because that would get redundant because other people on this channel have already done that, I will talk about my personal feelings about labeling one's orientation and labeling one's sexuality. Again, you're talking about a spectrum, and trying to figure out where you fit on that spectrum is just really complicated, especially since for a lot of people that can actually change. And I think that's true for myself. When I was younger and still identifying as female, or thought that I identified as female, or whatever you want to call it, I was only attracted to males, or male, presenting people. As I got older and I started to explore my sexual activity more, I learned that I was also attracted to females, and so for a long time, I identified as, being gay or being a lesbian because I was attracted to females, and I was still identifying mostly as female even though I was more masculine. And then, I ran into a cis male that I was really attracted to and really sexually attracted to, and I fought it really hard because I was like, no, like, I'm attracted to women now. And I thought that, like, it was an end-all be-all thing and that you had to, like, choose, and I don't think that that's true. I don't think you do have to choose, and so therefore finding a label for yourself starts to get really complicated, and I kind of threw it all out the window at that point. I just said, I don't really need a label, because who I'm attracted to and who I want to have sex with and whatever, like, doesn't seem to be a really fixed thing. And then I found out that there were more than two genders. Like I said in previous videos, I didn't actually know that. I didn't know what trans was, and I certainly didn't know that trans was a spectrum. Trans isn't just like, people that go from one to the other, and we'll talk about that in another video coming up soon, but it's a whole spectrum of people. And so, in my opinion, there aren't only two genders, and I'm not only attracted to two genders, so I don't consider myself bisexual, and I don't feel the need to really label myself. That being said, labels make people comfortable. So coming up, with the whole incredible list of different types of sexualities and sexual orientations, I think is a necessary thing. I know it bothers a lot of people, and they're like, why do we need labels? Labels are for cans of soup. You don't need to know what somebody's got going on in their brain, and you don't need to know what somebody prefers to do in bed. That's true. But for some reason, it does make a certain part of the population more comfortable, either with themselves or with other people. So, like I said, Jaden and Matt already talked quite a bit about this, so I'm not going to get into listing them all. It's a really fascinating topic. I urge you to do your own research, sit down and really explore the different types of sexuality, different types of sexual orientations. Personally, having gone through this whole realm of exploring my own feelings and exploring the different kinds of labels, like I said, I'm attracted to people all over the gender spectrum and all over the sex spectrum and all over the activity spectrum. So while I have only at this point in my life been sexually active with cis people, I find people all over the spectrum to be really, really attractive. I know who I prefer to have sex with at this point, but that doesn't mean that that's not going to change, So, yeah, I consider myself to be at the very least polysexual, if not pansexual. Like I said, I haven't actually been with the entire spectrum of trans people, so I don't actually know if pansexual technically applies to me. I don't want to say it because I can't really own it, but I find a lot of different people to be attractive. I find, really masculine presenting and identifying people to be attractive. I find very feminine presenting people to be attractive. And I find very effeminate men to be attractive. I find very butch females to be attractive. And I actually have come across a fair amount of androgynous people lately, and I found them to be also insanely attractive, in a completely different way. And I've been searching for a term for that, actually, and I haven't been able to come across one. You can find, like I said, all these different labels. I can't find one for being attracted to androgynous people, and I can't quite put my finger on why I find androgynous people to be really attractive. But at any rate, if I was to be forced to label myself, I would say that I'm pansexual. But in the end, I think that the need for labels is just really the need for people to understand themselves and to understand one another. So I only even choose that label because it makes other people comfortable. I don't really go around being like, oh, this is how I identify, because I don't think you need to, unless it makes you comfortable. So, like I said, we're going to start breaking down the difference between all these things in the next couple of weeks, so tune back in for that. And thanks for listening, guys. I hope that made sense. I'll see you next week.